Hey there, amazing fans! Before we dive into today's drama, don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means the world to us. Now, welcome to another relaxing moment with Suga Stories. Grab a seat, sit back, relax, and let's journey into the story together. It was supposed to be a simple walk, a few wildflowers, a picnic. But that day, Princess Amaya vanished into thin air, and no one saw her again for 12 years. The kingdom of Velmora had always been known for its magic, not the kind sung about in tales or whispered in taverns, but a quiet, old sort of magic. It was in the way the wind stirred the golden trees, how the rivers hummed songs only the elders could remember, and most of all, in the sacred glades, the lush, untouched forest where the royals often went to seek peace. And on the spring morning of her 7th birthday, Princess Amaya had begged for a day in those very woods. "Please, Mama," she'd pleaded, tugging gently at Queen Selenia's velvet sleeve. "Just us. You and me. And Papa, I want to pick the bluebell crowns, like you used to." Queen Selenia, graceful and strong, smiled with a sadness she never quite explained to her daughter. "Only if you promise to stay where I can see you." Amaya beamed. "I promise on the flame." The royal family departed before the sun had risen fully over the Emerald Hills. Amaya wore a white cloak stitched with red flame patterns, the royal emblem, and carried a tiny basket for flowers. Her laughter echoed like wind chimes as she skipped between trees, weaving joy into the quiet forest. King Thalen and Queen Selenia followed behind, more reserved but watchful, guarded by a handful of elite soldiers who kept a respectful distance. The sacred glades were considered safe, no wolves, no bandits, and no strangers. But that morning, something in the air felt off. The trees were too still. The birds, silent. Even the sun seemed reluctant to pierce the canopy. It happened so fast. One moment, Amaya was chasing a red butterfly deeper into the woods. Her mother called after her, laughing, "Not too far, little flame." The next moment, silence. No crunching leaves. No giggles. No reply. "Amaya!" Panic tightened the queen's voice. The guards fanned out instantly. The king barked orders, and within seconds, half the royal battalion was on their knees, scanning footprints, signs of struggle, anything. They found the butterfly. Crush. They found her basket. Empty. They found a small piece of her white cloak, caught on a thorn near the mouth of a cave no one had seen before, jagged, wide, and exhaling a cold draft that smelled of iron and ash. The soldiers approached with caution. One dropped a torch inside. The flame was swallowed by the dark. No sound came back. Queen Selenia's knees gave out. For the next 2 years, Velmora lived in suspended mourning. Every town square bore posters of the missing princess, her cherubic face painted with warmth, her brown curls wild and windswept, her eyes filled with innocent fire. Hundreds joined the search. Nobles, mercenaries, villagers with nothing to offer but hope. The queen offered a reward that could buy a dozen manors. But the sacred glades yielded nothing. Not a body. Not a clue. Nothing but that cave, which some began calling the Soul's Maw. Legends bubbled up like rot from forgotten scrolls. The cave, they said, was a cursed place. A wound in the world where the veil between life and death ran thin. A prison for old gods. A home for the watcher below. Eventually, even the bravest refused to go near it. 3 years after Amaya vanished, Queen Selenia stood on the palace balcony and addressed the kingdom. Her voice was clear. Cold. Final. "My daughter, Amaya of the Flame, is dead." The sky cracked open with thunder as she spoke. Rain soaked the cobblestones. Nobles bowed their heads. The people wept. But what no one saw was what happened that night. Selenia entered her chamber, closed the door, and never came out again. By morning, she was gone, a vial of blackroot poison clutched in her hand. The kingdom of Velmora went into a deep silence. King Thalen, too broken to rule, abdicated and disappeared into the mountains. Power shifted to the queen's brother, Lord Severin, a war hero turned court strategist, who vowed to maintain the throne in memory of the royal flame. The people were too tired to protest, too sad to hope. The royal banners were changed. The flame crest was dimmed, a single ember, no longer ablaze. Velmora moved on. Or tried to. While the kingdom mourned, beneath the earth, Amaya breathed. She didn't remember how she'd gotten there. Only that she'd chased the butterfly into the woods, and then, nothing. A sharp sting at her neck. Darkness. A scent like burnt leaves. She awoke on cold stone. Her hand scraped. Her lip bleeding. A blanket tucked over her shoulders. And eyes. Watching her from the shadows. "Who are you?" Amaya whispered. The woman stepped forward. Pale skin, long white hair, and eyes that glowed like dying embers. "I am Rhea," the woman said. Her voice echoed unnaturally. "And you are safe now. Sleep." The cave was vast, not a simple tunnel but a network of chambers, some with carvings older than any Amaya had ever seen. Strange symbols glowed on the walls. A pool of water so still it looked like glass. Roots dangled from above, like veins of the earth itself. Rhea forbade her from exploring alone. "The cave tests those who wander," she warned. "Stay near me, or you will be lost forever." At first, Amaya cried for her mother. Every night. At first, Rhea comforted her, with songs in languages Amaya didn't know. She fed her roots and berries, taught her to make fire with a flick of her hand, to listen for the heartbeat of stone. "You are not Amaya anymore," Rhea said one day, when the child dared ask about her family. "You were abandoned. Forgotten. Out there, you were nothing. Here, you are mine." The princess flinched. "That's not true. My mother is dead." Amaya's world cracked. And something inside her, something young and bright, went quiet. Outside, Amaya became a cautionary tale. "Mothers, don't let your children wander the woods. Remember the flame princess." Children lit candles on her birthday. Some whispered she had become a spirit. Others said she lived on, far away, in a different kingdom, with no memory of who she truly was. But the real Amaya, the girl born of flame, the girl who once danced in sunbeams, was now a shadow. A wraith in training. Years passed. She forgot the warmth of her mother's hands. The sound of her name sung in the palace halls. Even her own reflection, denied to her all these years, became an alien idea. In her mind, she wasn't Amaya anymore. She was something else. Something waiting. She had no name. No mirror. No past. For 12 years, the girl who was once a princess became a creature of shadow, raised by a woman who claimed to save her, and may have been her captor all along. The first rule of the cave was silence. Rhea enforced it early, often with a sharp slap to the wrist or a sudden extinguishing of the cave's lantern flames. "No idle talk," she would hiss, her voice echoing off the stone. "Words are doors. Speak too freely and things listen." The second rule, no names. Amaya was never called by hers again. "Names tie you to the old world," Rhea said. "They make you easy to find. Easy to control." Instead, Rhea called her child, or simply. Amaya protested at first. She screamed. Begged to see the sun. Begged for her mother. Rhea said nothing. And then on the 7th night, the woman finally spoke. A strange lullaby hummed in an ancient tongue. It sounded like a morning song, and something about it calmed the girl. From then on, Amaya obeyed. Sort of. The cave was more than a hole in the earth. It was a labyrinth, alive in ways Amaya couldn't understand. Walls whispered when touched. Pools glowed faintly under moonless nights. Sometimes, Amaya swore she heard footsteps when she was alone. Rhea lived in a carved alcove filled with crystals, dried herbs, old scrolls, and a single wolf's pelt. She wore robes stitched with runes, and her white hair fell to her waist like silk snow. She cooked strange stews from roots and fungi. She made Amaya drink bitter green brews that kept the memories from rotting. But the most curious thing about Rhea wasn't her magic, or her eyes that never blinked. It was that she never aged. Amaya did. Slowly, visibly. Her voice changed, her limbs stretched, her thoughts deepened. But Rhea remained untouched. Frozen. "How old are you?" Amaya once dared ask, after 5 years in the dark. Rhea smiled, her eyes distant. Old enough to have burned with kings and danced in the ruins of the first cities. Rhea trained her relentlessly. Amaya was forced to wake before dawn, though there was no dawn underground, and run barefoot across jagged rock to build calluses. She learned to hunt cave creatures with nothing but a sharpened bone. Learned to track scents through pitch black. Learned chants in languages that tasted like ash in her mouth. "Why do I have to learn this?" she asked once, angry after failing a lesson in flamecraft. Rhea's expression darkened. "Because you were weak. Because they left you to die. Because only the forgotten can survive the breaking." It was always the same message. The world above had betrayed her. She was no princess. No one had come for her. No one cared. At first, Amaya resisted this lie. But Rhea had time. And no mirrors. Without a reflection, Amaya forgot her own face. Despite everything, some memories refused to die. A melody. A scent. The feeling of warm sunlight on her skin. They came in flashes, brief, dreamlike moments that made her eyes well up for reasons she couldn't name. She remembered the feel of velvet under her fingers. A woman's laugh, her mother's? And a man's voice saying, "Little flame, come back here." Sometimes, she whispered these memories into the silence when Rhea was gone. But the cave remembered. And so did Rhea. On what might have been her 19th birthday, though she had long since stopped counting, Amaya ventured deeper into the cave than ever before. A storm had shaken loose part of a tunnel wall. She squeezed through, guided by instinct more than thought. What she found was strange. An altar, cracked and covered in moss. Symbols older than Rhea's language carved into the stone. And there, tucked beneath a skeletal hand, lay a silver pendant. It was warm to the touch, shaped like a flame. And on it, the crest of Velmore. The moment her fingers closed around it, a flood of memory slammed into her. Red robes. Laughter. A ballroom. The smell of rose oil. Her mother. Her name. Amaya. The cave walls seemed to shake with the power of it. Her knees buckled. She remembered. And then she screamed. Rhea found her hours later, curled on the stone floor, clutching the pendant to her chest. Her eyes were wet, but blazing. "What is this?" Rhea demanded. Amaya stood, shaking but upright. "You lied to me. I was never abandoned. I was stolen." Rhea's mouth twisted. "They let you go. They let you die. I saved you." "No," Amaya said, voice rising. "You hid me. You buried me. But I remember who I am. I am." Rhea struck her. The blow sent her tumbling. Blood pooled on her lip. "You are nothing," Rhea shrieked. "You are what I made you. No name. No past. Only survival." Amaya stood again. Slower this time. She held up the pendant. "This says otherwise." Rhea's eyes narrowed. She held out a hand, fire flared in her palm. Without warning, she seized Amaya's wrist and pressed it into the flame. The pain was instant. Searing. Amaya screamed. The pendant dropped. Rhea released her and stood back, breathing hard. "You'll forget again. You always forget." Amaya crawled to the pendant, picked it up. Her palm blistered and raw. But she didn't let go. Not this time. That night, while Rhea slept, or pretended to, Amaya packed what she could: dried roots, a knife, her stolen pendant. She followed the stream that ran under the altar chamber. Let it guide her through narrow tunnels slick with moss and shadow. Hours passed. She scraped her skin raw. Nearly drowned once. But she kept going. At one point she heard a howl behind her. Rhea's voice, maybe. Or something else. But the fear didn't stop her. When the water tunnel finally broke open, Amaya spilled into the night. Real night. A sky filled with stars. Air filled with birdsong. Her knees hit grass. Real, breathing grass. And for the first time in 12 years, Princess Amaya wept. Not for what she'd lost, but for what she'd finally remembered. After 12 years in darkness, she stepped into the light, but the kingdom she found was not the one she left, and she was no longer the girl they remembered. The stars hurt her eyes. After years in darkness, the sky felt infinite, a gaping mouth, ready to swallow her whole. Amaya stumbled through the forest, clutching her burned hand, still wrapped around the flame-shaped pendant. Every breath of open air felt like drowning. The world was louder than she remembered. Birds cried. Leaves rustled. Insects buzzed too close. And worst of all, her mind wouldn't stop screaming. Where do I go? Puma. Amaya, she whispered aloud, as if the name alone could build her back. But it felt foreign on her tongue, like trying to wear a childhood dress that no longer fit. By dawn, she had crossed into the outskirts of what used to be the kingdom of Velmora. She remembered it as green, alive, lanterns hanging from treetops, music drifting through village squares. But now, the roads were cracked. Caravans moved in silence. Faces turned away when she passed. People looked older, not in years, but in weight. Their spines stooped as if carrying invisible burdens. She stopped at a well to drink, and a child screamed. She's cursed, the girl yelled, pointing. Look at her. Her eyes. Amaya backed away. In the cave, her eyes had adjusted to shadow. Now they glowed faintly in the dark, not human anymore. Not quite. A merchant threw a rock. Witch. Get away. Amaya fled into the woods, her cloak in tatters, her stomach burning with hunger and shame. By the second week, she reached the outer walls of Veilguard, the once glorious capital of Velmora. Gone were the bright banners and music-filled plazas. Now, guards patrolled with spears and masks. Banners bore a blackened flame, Lord Severin's sigil. She entered disguised as a beggar, covering her face with soot. Her first night in the city, she saw a woman whipped for disrespecting the crown. Her second night, she witnessed a boy dragged away for shouting, "Long live the Flame Princess." The city whispered her name in fear, not reverence. Amaya's ghost walks again, an old man muttered. They say she haunts the palace gardens. She's a demon now, raised by witches. Every mention sent a chill down her spine. Her name was not forgotten. It had been twisted. She found a broken mirror behind an abandoned tavern. It was the first time she'd seen her reflection in over a decade. At first, she didn't recognize the creature staring back. Wild hair, tangled and knotted. Pale skin streaked with ash. Eyes that flickered gold in the right light. Her mouth was hard. Her jaw sharp. She was no princess. Not anymore. But then, beneath the grime, beneath the trauma, she saw something. The mark. A tiny flame, faint but unmistakable, near her collarbone. The royal birthmark. She cried again. This time, not because she was lost, but because she'd found proof that she had been someone once. That she was someone still. When she finally dared speak her truth, it was in the market square. She stood atop a broken fountain. Clothes ragged. Voice hoarse. Eyes blazing. I am Amaya of the Flame, she said. Daughter of Selenia. True heir of Velmora. The crowd froze. For a breath, one blessed, long breath, someone gasped. Then laughter. Mocking. Cruel. You? A vendor sneered. You're just another hungry madwoman. She's touched in the head. Or maybe she's possessed. Amaya didn't argue. She couldn't. She was grabbed by city guards and thrown in chains. As they dragged her toward the dungeons, someone spit on her. Another threw a stone. The last thing she heard before the prison door slammed shut was the whisper of a guard. The king will want to hear about this. The prison stank of rot and rusted iron. Rats scurried freely. Hope was in short supply. Amaya huddled in a corner, clutching the pendant hidden beneath her tunic. She waited for the torture. Or worse. Instead, she got an old man with ink-stained fingers. Name? He asked, squinting. I told them, she said quietly. They didn't believe me. I'm not them. He stepped forward, and the torchlight caught his face. Wrinkled. Wise. Gentle. I am Bako. Once librarian of the Flame. Before they burned the archives. He knelt beside her. Took her hand. Gasped. He had seen the birthmark. You're her, he whispered. I was there the day you were born. I held the scroll that named you heir. Tears welled in Amaya's eyes. Why didn't they believe me? Because they can't afford to. Severin's power depends on you being dead. Bako stood. But now, we begin again. That night, Bako slipped her from her cell using ancient sigils. The guards never saw. They traveled by underground tunnels once used to smuggle magic relics. At dawn, they arrived at a ruined chapel deep in the woods. There, in the hidden crypts, lived the Order of the Flame, a forgotten group of royal loyalists, mystics, and historians who had waited over a decade for Amaya's return. At first, they didn't believe it was her. Then she removed her cloak, showed the mark, the pendant, and her burned hand, scarred by the flame of a witch. They fell to one knee. Amaya tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "I don't know if I'm worthy," she whispered. "I'm not the girl they lost. I'm not the queen they need." Bako stepped forward. Then become the woman they don't expect. The one Severin fears. She had returned, but not as a girl of silk and innocence. She was fire, tempered in darkness. And the trials ahead would not ask who she once was, but who she was willing to become. She came back to save her kingdom. But the kingdom she returned to was a shadow of what it once was, and behind every smile, a mask. Behind every mask, betrayal. Velmora was dying. Not with fire, but with silence. Its gardens were wilted. The rivers polluted. Music had been replaced by marching boots. The old temples were boarded shut, and any mention of the queen or the missing princess carried a penalty of exile, or worse. Amaya walked among her people now, cloaked and disguised, her eyes always scanning. Everywhere she looked, she saw reminders of what had been lost. A weeping widow selling her child's toy for bread. Street musicians playing cheerful songs with dead eyes. Guards stationed at every corner like statues of fear. "Do they even remember me?" she whispered to Bako one evening as they passed the broken sundial at the town square. Bako shook his head grimly. "They remember, but remembering has become dangerous. Most have forgotten on purpose. The rest were made to forget." Amaya had one chance to be seen. The Festival of Masks, an ancient holiday once used to celebrate unity, had become a mockery of its former self. Now, it was a spectacle controlled by Lord Severin, used to remind the people who ruled them. Ironically, masks gave people the courage to whisper. Amaya and Bako attended disguised among the revelers, faces hidden under fox and owl masks. The city glowed with red lanterns and firelight, but nothing felt warm. Children danced in silent rhythm. Couples laughed nervously. Overhead, a puppet show played out the tragedy of the Flame Princess, depicting her as a spoiled child who ran away and cursed the land. Amaya clenched her fists, shaking. "She's a demon now," the puppet master cackled. And her mother, the queen, died of shame. The crowd cheered. Coins were thrown. Amaya turned to leave, but before she could vanish into the shadows, a voice behind her whispered, "I've seen your face before, in the temple's broken glass." She spun. A young girl, barefoot, perhaps 10, holding a faded tapestry of Queen Selenia. Before Amaya could respond, guards shoved through the crowd. "Move," they barked. "Clear a path for the king's parade." Lord Severin emerged on a chariot pulled by black horses, his silver armor reflecting firelight. His face was painted with ceremonial ink, but his eyes were cold and calculating. He waved, tossed silver coins. Behind him, a group of chained prisoners shuffled forward, accused rebels, accused believers in the flame. They were to be executed at sunrise. "He thrives on control," Bako whispered, "and fear. You'll never reach the throne unless the people rise first. And they won't until they believe in something stronger than their fear." Amaya watched Severin pass and whispered, "Then let's give them fire." That night, Amaya returned to the Order of the Flame's hidden temple beneath the ruins of Selenia's old summer castle. It was there that the plan was born. 3 days later, as the first prisoner was dragged toward the execution block, a voice rang out over the square. "She lives." Amaya stepped forward, face uncovered. Cloak billowing, eyes burning like the prophecy's tale. The crowd gasped. The guards hesitated. "She's returned," shouted an old man from the crowd. "Look at the mark. The pendant." But before Amaya could speak another word, the guard struck her down. The crowd screamed. Amaya awoke on cold stone. Bruised. Bleeding. Shackled. She had misjudged their fear. She had believed her name alone would spark revolution. Instead, she was captured again, and this time, Severin would not let her slip away. He visited her in the night. Smirking. "Well," he said, dragging a chair across the cell floor, "I have to admit, I didn't expect you to come walking back into my kingdom." "It was never yours," she spat. He smiled. "It is now. And soon, the people will forget you entirely again." He leaned forward. "Tell me, little niece, what was it like growing up in the dirt? Did the ghosts teach you to curtsy?" Amaya met his gaze without blinking. "They taught me to survive." He stood, lips curling. "Pity. That lesson ends tomorrow." But Bako had prepared for this. The order had allies, quiet ones, within the palace kitchens, the laundry quarters, even the dungeons. One such ally, an old maid with cloudy eyes, smuggled Amaya a dagger baked into a loaf of bread. That night, the guard on duty fell asleep under the influence of a herb slipped into his wine. Amaya escaped in silence, slitting the lock chain and fleeing through a drain tunnel used centuries ago for the queen's private gardens. When she emerged, wet and shaking, Bako was waiting with a cloak. "No more mistakes," she said. He nodded. "No more speeches. Only fire." They moved quickly. Small villages. Border towns. Nomadic tribes who still prayed to the Flame Mother and left offerings under moonlight. Everywhere they went, Amaya revealed the scar on her hand, the pendant, the birthmark, and the truth. She didn't ask for loyalty. She earned it. Not by name. By grit. She lit fires in fields the tax collectors had drained. She freed children pressed into military training. She healed the sick with Rhea's forgotten herbs. Word spread. They called her the Firewalker. The Returned Flame. The Ash Queen. By the end of the month, Amaya had gathered 24 loyal fighters. By the end of the second, she had 500. Not soldiers, survivors. Just like her. She came back to find a kingdom. Instead, she found a graveyard of fear, and from its ashes, lit a fire no tyrant could smother. The war for the throne had begun. Anyone can claim to be royal, but to prove it? That takes more than blood. It takes pain, fire, and truth no mask can hide. Deep beneath the cradle peaks, where the sun rarely reached and the air was thick with ancient incense, the sanctuary of embers had been built stone by the first flame-bearers. The Order of the Flame brought Amaya here, not to crown her, but to test her. The bloodline isn't enough, Bako warned. Even Severin carries royal blood. Amaya's jaw tightened. Then test me. Burn me. Break me. But let the truth be seen. The sanctuary door was sealed behind her. Inside, only the sacred trials awaited. The first test was simple, in legend. She would walk barefoot across 12 meters of burning coal while carrying the emberstaff, an iron rod infused with centuries of monarchic flame. Only the true heir, it was said, could pass through unburned, her soul aligned with the fire's will. Amaya entered the chamber with trembling hands. The coals glowed. The room fell into silence. She stepped. Each footfall hissed. Sparks leapt up and kissed her skin. But she did not scream. Did not stop. With every step, she remembered Rhea's voice. Sharp, cruel, survival-bound. Pain is not your enemy. It is your forge. 12 steps. 12 seconds. She emerged, bleeding, blistered, but holding the emberstaff aloft. It did not melt her hand. In the second chamber, Amaya was bound to an oak chair carved from the roots of the flame tree. The monks of the order circled her, chanting the chant of roots, an ancient liturgy said to pierce through lies and illusions. If she was a fraud, the roots would strangle her. If she was true, the roots would show her her past, and perhaps, her future. The chant began. Amaya's mind cracked open. She saw the day she was born, Queen Selenia, crying with joy, whispering, "My little son fire." She saw the cave, Rhea, the pendant, the flame burning her palm. She saw Severin whispering in a guard's ear, dropping a coin bag heavier than loyalty. Then, a vision she did not expect. herself from older, surrounded by children, not all royal. Some were street urchins. Others wore priest robes. One held her hand with a familiar burn scar. The roots released her. The last test was the most feared. A relic older than Velmora itself, the mirror of blood was said to reflect not what you looked like, but who you truly were. Some who faced it went mad. Others came out changed forever. Amaya stood before it, alone, as the order watched from a distance. She stepped forward and stared into the glass. At first, all she saw was her own worn face. Then the mirror shifted. She saw two versions of herself. One, the queen in flames, powerful, adored, ruling with grace and justice. The other, a girl still trapped in the cave, eyes wild, hands shaking, whispering her name into darkness. She closed her eyes. "I am both," she said. "I am the girl who was forgotten, and the queen who remembers." When she opened her eyes, both versions merged into one. The mirror glowed gold and cracked. The trial was complete. When Amaya emerged from the sanctuary, the order bowed. Even the oldest among them, High Keeper Silex, wept. "You are the flame returned," he said, voice trembling. "We feared the line had ended with Selenia, but it merely hid until the time was right." Word spread fast. Whispers became proclamations. "The Flame Princess has returned. She passed the 3 trials. She is the one from the prophecy, the crown of fire." Small villages lit signal pyres. Old symbols of the flame were painted on doors again. The people began to speak her name, not in fear, but in defiance. Severin heard the rumors. He did not laugh this time. Within the week, Amaya's hideout was raided. Dozens of Severin's personal assassins, the Shadow Guard, trained in secrecy and blood magic, attacked the temple. Amaya was in meditation when the warning bell rang. She didn't panic. She rose, picked up the ember staff, and met the shadows in fire. What followed was a battle not of numbers, but of belief. Amaya fought like a woman with nothing left to lose. Flames erupted from old braziers as her pendant pulsed. She moved with precision learned not in royal halls, but in the wilds. Bako was injured. One monk was killed. But in the end, the Shadow Guard retreated, leaving behind one message carved in a dagger blade. "You have chosen war." After the attack, the order could no longer remain hidden. Amaya stood before her allies, peasants, monks, fugitives, former knights, and raised her burned hand. "We have no palace, no army, no treasury," she said, "but we have each other. And we have the truth. That is more powerful than any sword." Bako stepped beside her, now walking with a cane. They tried to erase her. "We'll write her back into history with flame." Maps were drawn. Routes studied. Supply lines identified. Villages sympathetic to the crown began storing food and weapons in old cellars. They didn't call themselves rebels. They called themselves the Flamebound. Amaya's first act as a leader was not to attack, but to liberate. She led a mission to the town of Dorwin, where Severin's tax lords were starving farmers and burning harvests. She didn't come with fire, she came with food. Her army arrived not with swords raised, but hands extended. They brought bread, water, medicine. And when the Flamebound banner was raised over Dorwin's town hall, a single flame over a mountain peak, the people didn't resist. They cheered. She had not claimed the throne with violence, but with memory. Now they believed. But belief comes at a price. As Amaya's flame grew, so did Severin's fury, and in his palace of masks, the tyrant began to prepare a trap, one only a true queen could survive. They tried to erase her. They failed. Now she returns not as a whisper, but as a wildfire. The kingdom of Velmora no longer slept. Torches burned in quiet towns. Scribes inked secret letters. Travelers carried messages through back roads. Even the mountains had ears, and the rivers ran red with rumor. One name was on every tongue. Maya. In the capital, Severin paced his war chamber with trembling hands. "She's just a girl," he growled. "She's a symbol now," said Captain Thorn, commander of the Shadow Guard. "And symbols are harder to kill than people." Amaya did not march with brute force. She knew Velmora better than Severin did, not the castle walls, but the forests, the rivers, the border towns, the desperation. And she knew something Severin didn't. Rhea didn't just teach me to survive, she told Bako. She taught me to outthink predators. They hit supply chains first. Flame-bound riders sabotaged caravans bringing food to the capital. Then came the message intercepts. Bako's network cracked Severin's secret codes, turning the king's own orders against him. Then the morale. At night, flame-bound envoys would sneak into towns and villages, projecting Amaya's message using old light mirrors. I was forgotten. But I remember all of you. And I fight for you now. The first real clash came at Hollow Pass, a narrow corridor between the Amber Mountains and the northern lake. Severin sent 2,000 soldiers to hold it. Amaya had barely 600 fighters. But she had strategy. She split her forces into 3 groups, 2 to flank the cliffs, 1 to lure the soldiers into the gorge. Then she did what no commander had dared in years. She lit the gorge itself. Using oil from old trading caches, Amaya set fire to the surrounding rock wall. A ring of flame. Trapped, confused, and ambushed from above, Severin's army surrendered by dawn. Amaya sent the survivors back to Severin, unharmed, but each with the same message carved into a wood chip. Your fire dies. Mine spreads. Velmora had not seen war like this in a century. Tactical. Human. Amaya wasn't just winning battles. She was redefining leadership. Inside the rebellion, Amaya's closest allies began to take form. Bako, her advisor, scholar, and voice of memory. Tyrion, a former palace guard, now her military captain. Nara, a healer and former spy, who knew Severin's wine steward by name. Aloin, the child from the masked festival, now her youngest courier, fast, invisible, fiercely loyal. Together, they became the flame's heart. Together, they planned the final march. After 6 months of uprising, 6 towns liberated, and over 5,000 citizens joining her banner, Amaya stood before the capital, Vel Citadel. Rain poured as the flame-bound army encircled the city. They brought with them no siege towers, no battering rams. Just their will. Inside, Severin watched from the tallest tower, drinking from a poison chalice he believed made him immortal. She'll never make it past the gate, he sneered. He was half right. Amaya didn't wait for nightfall. She walked alone to the gate at sunrise, wearing a red cloak and carrying nothing but the pendant and the scar on her hand. The guards on the wall laughed at first. Then they recognized the crest on the pendant. Then they saw the mark on her skin, the royal flame. Then, they opened the gate. Without bloodshed. The capital was ready. But it was not over. Inside the palace, Severin had prepared his last defense. A hidden chamber rigged with mirror fire, a deadly alchemical blaze that could engulf the entire castle in moments. If I cannot rule it, he said, I will reduce it to ash. Amaya stormed the palace with her inner circle, every hallway booby-trapped with poison darts, blade wires, and hidden archers. But she knew this place. Somewhere, in the back of her memory, she remembered a servant's passage behind the eastern stairwell. They used it. At last, the place where it all began. Amaya entered the throne room to find Severin waiting in full armor, his sword drawn. You dare step where your mother once wept? He spat. Amaya didn't flinch. I step here because she did. He attacked. Their duel was brutal. Not elegant. Not graceful. Sparks flew. Blades rang. Severin was stronger, but Amaya was faster. Finally, she disarmed him with a move taught by Rhea in the cave. A twist and pivot that turned his momentum against him. She held the ember staff at his throat. Why? She asked, breath ragged. He laughed bitterly. Because I could. Your mother was weak. Your father dead. I bribed the guards. I fed the wolves. I watched them carry you into the forest and... He stopped. Too late. The High Council had entered behind her. So had the scribes. So had the people. Every word had been heard. Severin fell to his knees, not from injury. From exposure. His lies were no longer stronger than her truth. The council stripped him of title. The people demanded his death. But Amaya chose otherwise. "You sent me to a cave," she said. "You'll return to one." She exiled him to the very cave she had been imprisoned in. Alone. With his ghosts. He screamed as he was dragged away. She never looked back. The people gathered in the rain as Amaya stepped onto the palace balcony. No crown. No fanfare. Just a cloak, a scar, and the fire within her. "I am not a queen because I was born in silk," she said. "I am a queen because I returned in rags, and still stood." The city erupted in cheers. The old bells rang for the first time in 12 years. Velmora had a queen again. The throne was reclaimed. But a throne is not the end of a story, only the beginning. And the Queen of Fire had one more chapter to write, for the forgotten, the hidden, and the broken. She was lost to the shadows, trapped in silence for 12 years. Now she returns, not just to reclaim a throne, but to ignite a kingdom's soul. Velmora woke slowly from its long nightmare. The palace halls, once cold and empty, now buzzed with life. Amaya walked through them, barefoot, hands raw, cloak still worn from the road. The people didn't bow out of fear, but respect. She had earned their hearts, not just their loyalty. Severin's exile to the cave was meant as a punishment, but it also became a mirror of his sins. Inside the cold darkness, the shadows whispered back his own guilt. Amaya did not gloat. Justice was not cruelty. She set the terms. Severin would be given a chance for redemption through service to the people he betrayed. Few believed it would last. Amaya's first acts as queen were small but profound. She opened the palace gates to the orphans of war, many of whom had never known family or heritage. The caves where she had been imprisoned were transformed into sanctuaries, places of refuge and learning. She decreed a new law. No child, no soul, would be forgotten or cast away. Amaya summoned the Order of the Flame and the remaining nobles. Together, they rewrote the kingdom's laws, not to concentrate power, but to distribute it. She named Bako her royal chronicler, keeper of memory and truth. Tyrion became the captain of the Queen's Guard, sworn to protect the people, not the crown. Nara was appointed chief healer, overseeing care for all. Amaya herself became known as the Queen of the Forgotten Flame, a ruler forged in hardship and bound by hope. One night, Amaya stood by the cliffs overlooking the sea. A raven landed beside her, a messenger. Tied to its leg was a small note, written in a strange script. "The fire you carry is yours alone now. Do not forget where it was born, but burn bright, Queen." Amaya smiled. Rhea was gone. But the lessons remained. Amaya sought out the few who had remained loyal to her mother's memory. She reunited with old friends and distant relatives. Some had thought her dead, others had mourned her quietly. Her presence healed wounds not just political, but deeply personal. Her mother's perfume still lingered on a shawl Amaya kept close, a tangible link to a past that was never truly lost. The kingdom's future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was hopeful. Amaya rode through the capital streets on horseback, no guard, no procession. Children ran beside her, laughing. Merchants reopened stalls. The flame, once nearly extinguished, burned steadily in every heart. They tried to erase her, to bury her beneath darkness and lies. But Amaya returned, with fire in her soul and a kingdom to rebuild. Her story is a beacon to all who have been forgotten, a reminder that even in the deepest cave, light can be found, and a queen can rise.